Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the PI Filmmaker podcast. Now, my mouth feels really dry this morning. I've had loads of water, but I've done a few actor tongue exercises to get the mouth moving and warmed up, but I just can't get into it. Hopefully that's not too much of a distraction, but if I'm stopping for water, please bear with me. So, this week, this is going to kind of follow on a little bit from last week's podcast. Now, I know I said that I wouldn't be revisiting festivals, but a few things have happened, and it seems that maybe I should continue with that line of thought. So, yesterday morning, I was looking through my emails and I saw one from Show Film First. Now, Show Film First are a company that offer tickets for events, but they do so at discounted prices, and sometimes they're even offering free tickets to events because the events haven't sold enough. You'll pay maybe an access fee for some of these events. That seemed to be introduced because I think people were booking places because it was free and then not showing up. So now you pay an access fee kind of to commit on your commit as a customer or as an attendee that you're going to actually show up. So you might pay $5.95 or $4.95, whatever it is, to attend one of these events. But essentially, it's a free ticket. And yesterday, I saw that the Manchester Film Festival were offering tickets through Show Film First. So included in that lineup was the closing night film California Scheming, which I didn't name it last week, but that's the James McAvoy film, the film that James McAvoy has directed. And the festival have used James McAvoy to promote their festival. But now, obviously, they've not sold enough tickets for that event, and so they're offering free tickets or £5 tickets through Show Film First. And it just kind of, again, raises the question about festivals. If you can attach a name like that and people aren't going to show up, then what can you do? But also, maybe is it people not buying tickets because this is a film that will be readily available within a few weeks. I think the release date is something like April the 10th, and that's nationwide. So are you going to spend $16.95 for a ticket to watch it this Sunday? Maybe not. Because at the same time, even though it's now £5 through Show Film First, it's still $16.95 on the Manchester Film Festival website. But I found out this week from someone who has a festival pass, so they've paid to basically as many screenings as they want, as far as I know. But that festival pass does not include opening and closing night films. They told me you have to pay an extra fee to get those included. So people have spent their money on festival passes, thinking that they can attend the whole festival, or maybe they knew, but the closing night film was, I think they said to me, for opening and closing night film you had to top up your festival pass for £17. Meanwhile, the closing night film is now on Show Film First because they've not shown enough. If this just wasn't about making money, surely the closing night film should be included in the festival pass. You've paid enough money, you've paid for multiple screenings, you should be able to attend the closing night film as far as I'm concerned. But again, thinking about making money, they must have thought, James McAvoy, we can maybe charge consumers $16.95 to come and watch that film, and people will pay it. And if the people with passes want to see that film, they'll have to top up their festival pass. Not cool as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, moving away from festivals, so something happened last Friday that I'm going to spend most of the podcast talking about. Because after I put out last week's podcast, I'll get my words out. After I put up last week's podcast about film festivals, I had a few emails pop up with notifications from the movie database. Now, this isn't IMDb. This is the movie database. So it's a different website, but they do kind of the same thing, essentially. It lists films that have been made. It has the cast, the crew, details about the plot, and so on and so forth. And I received emails, and a few kept coming through, and I was like, what the fuck is this? So I logged into my account, and I saw that some of my short films had been removed. So they'd been deleted, and I was like, why? what's going on here? Like, why are these films being deleted? So I did some digging, and I saw that also my profile image had been removed. So someone had gone through, an admin, and decided to delete some of my short films and my profile image. And now I was primarily known for camera work on a few features that I've done. Now, the reason why the movie database is important is because that's how Letterboxd, the film reviewing platform, get their information. So they become aware of films and filmmakers and so on. That information is coming from the movie database. So the reason I added my films to the movie database in the first place was so that they could be on Letterboxd and people could review them. Now, obviously, that has had its own problems, as I've discussed previously, but it's obviously an important website in that regard because that's how Letterboxd are getting their information. So some of my short films had been removed. My profile picture had been removed, so I've become a faceless avatar. So I started digging, like, why have these films been deleted? And I discovered the following. Bear with me. So the messages themselves were these kind of pre-written things. It was like, "Hi there, this is a friendly note from the content moderators at TMDb. The entry you created title was deleted. This title did not meet our new content guidelines. If you have any questions about this deletion, feel free to reply to this message." So let's go to new content guidelines. So, deleted entry. Moderators are tasked to remove unsupported content, e.g. video games, as well as entries created in the wrong in the wrong section. When an incorrect entry is removed, the creator receives a private message letting them know that the entry did not meet our content guidelines. If you receive such a message, please read the guidelines below to understand why the entry was deleted and avoid repeating the same mistake in the future. So it has then a list of not supported, so that includes video games, ads, music videos, YouTube, fan films, amateur content, alternate versions including director's cut, fan-made content, extra DVD material, promos, video reviews, live sport events, any show, so that includes theatre, concerts and so forth, bootleg recordings, concerts that are not part of a continuous live stream, virtual reality projects, 3D, 4D and simulator rides found in amusement parks, AI-generated movies, audio-only content including audiobooks, film podcasts, Blu-ray audio discs, photographic motion studies, online courses such as masterclass or university classes. So I'm looking through that list and I can only assume that they're deciding that these short films were amateur content. So I'm going to click on the amateur content guidelines. So amateur films and series, as well as school and or student films and series, are not allowed on the movie database. Should an amateur project be screened at a selective and relevant film festival, e.g. Small Town Film Festival, a youth film festival, or the Cannes Short Film Corner, do not qualify. Have a proper theatre release, brackets, e.g. a private rented screening does not qualify. Be on national television in a country, brackets, e.g. small local channels do not qualify. Be on Netflix or an equivalent, e.g. content uploaded to your own YouTube channel, Vimeo or website, or Amazon Prime do not qualify. Or picked up and sold by a proper distributor, brackets, e.g. local stores do not qualify. The film might be allowed. So, all non-qualifying entries found in the database will be deleted. Should you wish to contest the deletion of your entry, please reply to the deletion message with the following information: a clear explanation of why the entry qualify based on one of our exceptions, and at least one reference to an independent online source, so a professional newspaper, official website of a festival, verified social media accounts of a broadcaster. If no eligible reference is available on the internet, it is your responsibility to provide us with eligible documents, such as a scan of a festival program. We reserve the right to deny the request of anyone suspected of forging or tampering with such documents. This is wild. I mean, people just making up fake festival programs. When you add a new amateur content entry to the database, we strongly recommend that you add all the relevant screenings to the released information section, i.e. date and name of the festival, theatre, TV channel or distributor. No promotional links or links to the actual video, so example YouTube. YouTube content, short films, feature length films and series uploaded directly on YouTube are subject to the amateur content guidelines. Popular YouTubers do not qualify for for exemption. These policies are subject to change. No shit. We review them from time to time. Okay. So they must have decided that some of these short films were amateur films. So you must have approved festivals or a theatrical release, TV, but obviously not local kind of those access networks that they have in America. Like, no, a proper commercial television broadcaster, Netflix. But what doesn't count is Amazon Prime, YouTube, Vimeo, your website, and some festivals. And then it's on you to prove the legitimacy of your film. And as noted, the rules can change, and I suspect they probably will at some point. But here's the thing, right? I was looking at this and I was thinking, no, I'm not going to prove that these are films. So they actually deleted some short films that had screened at festivals, and you might be going, okay, well, what were the festivals like? They deleted 2 films that screened at the London Short Film Festival. Now, I'm sure that's a film festival that they would deem prestigious enough because it's a good festival. But no, those films were deleted. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, a filmmaker makes films to be creative, to express themselves. But then you have these institutions and these corporate kind of hacks, as far as I'm concerned, who are then deciding what passes the criteria for what they deem a film. So by all accounts, my first feature film is now an amateur feature because, as noted last week, and some people might say, yes, it's a very amateur feature, Mark. But no, like, in all seriousness, like, it didn't screen at a top festival. I discussed last week what happened with the Toronto International Film Festival, and I actually went back to find the number of films that they claimed they were going to screen. So they were going to screen something like 250 feature films, as well as a few hundred short films. They ended up screening 50 feature films. And then I self-distributed on Amazon, and the movie database are now saying Amazon Prime does not count as being a professional film. Now, I kind of get it in one way, because obviously Amazon has been flooded with a lot of feature film content, and not all of that is great, and maybe X falls into the not great pile. But it's wild to me that kind of these companies are deciding they're making the distinction between what is professional and what is amateur. So I was sat watching Film 4 one night and I came across Morbius. Now, I didn't see that film in the cinema. I watched it for kind of 15 minutes and it became a joke film online and the studio actually tried to re-release it, hoping maybe it'd take off like The Room, the Tommy Wiseau film. It was terrible. I watched it for about 15 minutes and I was like, I can't believe this is like a film that has had millions and millions of dollars spent on it. It's awful. And then like you get that film Madam Web, which I've seen clips of, and it's like both of these films are deemed professional because they've got union crews, they're spending millions on advertising, and they're getting in cinemas because they've got major studios behind them. But to me, that's amateur. Like these films that are made with no passion, well, maybe they were made with passion, I don't know, I'm making assumptions there, but like just real generic filmmaking, like paint by numbers filmmaking that they think they're going to kid people with, like that's an amateur approach to me. Like the professional approach is approaching something with passion and care, and I'm putting this out in the world because I really care about this story. I don't think kind of a lot of people working on Morbius were thinking, I really love this story that we're telling, and it becomes like an internet meme. I get that you need kind of distinctions between what is professional and what is amateur. I get it. But the world we're living in with YouTube and things like that, I've seen short films on YouTube that are better than things that I've watched at festivals, like miles better. I've seen feature films on YouTube that you're watching them, you're like, wow, this is impressive, and then you've got something in the cinema like Morbius. It doesn't really add up. As I say, I get that you need these platforms so that people can say, okay, this is professional, because the internet is now flooded with content, and I guess someone's got to define the lines. But why in this day and age do we need those lines defining? Because like I've worked on films that have ended up on Netflix, on Disney. Now I didn't direct these films, but the person behind them, they have money. They've got money that they can keep ploughing at festivals. I discussed this last week. If you put your money far and wide, you're going to win a film festival, and if you keep pursuing it, you can obviously get your film on Netflix and Disney. So I've worked on a film that has been on both Netflix and Disney. I don't think this film is great, quite frankly, and I'm not just talking about story-wise, and maybe this is a bit unprofessional of me to discuss this, but right now there's a film with Mark Duggan's name on it. Mark Duggan's in the credits. It's on Disney Plus, and there are visible technical mistakes in the film. So at one point, the filmmaker has repositioned a shot in post, and as a result, there's a black bar up the right-hand side of the screen. This is a visible mistake. Yet, according to the movie database, this is a professional film. X is an unprofessional film because it's not been on those platforms. So if X gets on a platform like Netflix or Disney Plus, suddenly it's a professional film. I have a lot of issues with this. I don't think this is how our storytelling, creativity should be operating at all. And I think filmmaking is one of the main areas, and film is a medium in which people exploit these boundaries because it's a way of people making money. So if I think of Notion, for example, which is the film I'm currently in post-production on, I paid for the actors, I paid for the locations. By the way, the actors were hired through, many of them had agents, so I was dealing directly with their agents. I paid for the locations. It's what I would deem a real production. However, if I choose the wrong pathway and I don't put it through these platforms that the movie database deem professional, suddenly it's not a professional film. This is kind of wild for filmmakers, because then it's back to pursuing these legitimate avenues, so festivals, for instance. But then you're looking and you're going, okay, there's a lot of festivals that will accept anything. Like there's this festival online that I've seen called Liftoff, and they're always sending out adverts inviting people to submit their work, but they've got like Liftoff Tokyo, Liftoff Manchester, Liftoff London, Liftoff Liverpool. They've got them all around the world, and they run it kind of, I think it's every 4 months there's a screening or something, but they're going all the time. And obviously for someone it's making them a nice living because they just keep running these festivals, and as long as people keep sending work in, which they will, because people want that legitimacy, they want to feel like they're a professional project, the work will find someone to screen it. And Liftoff are obviously exploiting that because they're taking films and then they're screening them. But the movie database excludes some festivals. Now, I don't know if Liftoff is one of the ones that they exclude. I don't know. But as discussed last week, even some of the top festivals are using, like Raindance, I discussed, they're using students to help assess some of the work. So you're spending I went back and had a look at the money. So I believe it was 58 quid for the early bird deadline and 95 quid for the final deadline for a feature film. You might spend 95 quid and then a student is watching your film and deciding whether it's worthy to go on for the later selection rounds. So you're looking at that and you go, okay, if I meet the needs of some students and then meet the needs of Elliot Grove, the founder of Raindance, my film is now professional. These are kind of hoops that I'm not prepared to jump through, quite frankly, because like after last week's episode, I did go and I thought, you know what, it's probably unfair for me to judge without actually going to watch one of the films at the Manchester Film Festival. So I went to the film festival, to a Friday evening screening last week, and I watched one of the feature films, which was an independent film from Manchester, so that was good. apparently I think it was micro budget, but it was certainly independent. 5-day shoot is what they said. I reviewed it on Letterboxd because I thought, okay, help out where I can. It gets some visibility. That is now a professional film because it's been screened at the Manchester Film Festival. If Notion isn't screened at a festival like Manchester, it's amateur, and it will remain amateur for as long as the movie database has these rules. The film itself, it seemed pretty personal. I think it was pretty personal. Not that defines quality or worth, but there was certainly heart to it. And even though I didn't like all the elements in that particular film, there was enough good in it that I thought, okay, yeah, I'll give this a fair review, a nice review. Not that I would give it an unfair review if it was bad, but I could certainly understand why the Manchester Film Festival selected it for screening. It was kind of easily digestible. It had heart. It was local. It demonstrated that independent approach to filmmaking. So in that regard, I'm all for them screening that particular film because it wasn't about promoting a celebrity name. But here's where it gets complicated because, like, distribution, Amazon Prime no longer counts. YouTube doesn't count. So regardless of the views, the movie database, even if it's had millions of views, they're deeming that amateur content. Now, some filmmakers on YouTube will go, "No, I'm no amateur. I'm making a lot of money through putting this work out into the world through YouTube." You then have companies like Indie Rights, which distribute indie filmmakers. They put some of their films onto YouTube. So are they now releasing amateur films? Because I'm sure some of those filmmakers would disagree. They'd say, no, I've made my indie film and I want it to find an audience, so I'm letting Indie Rights have it, and they're going to put it out into different territories, including through YouTube. And then you're just thinking, so historically, if we think of something like Clerks, the Kevin Smith film, or El Mariachi, the Robert Rodriguez film, so if those films did not find distribution and didn't go on to be the indie success stories that they were from the 90s, were they suddenly amateur features? Why do these like boundaries exist with filmmaking? Like, if someone's a photographer and they're out in the streets doing street photography, they're a photographer. If someone's a painter and they've got their own little studio somewhere where they paint their work and maybe they even sell it on their own website, is that not professional because they're not in a top art gallery in London? Why is film different? So I'm going to read you the back of the DVD for a few weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? I discussed Jafar Panahi, the filmmaker, the Iranian filmmaker, who's obviously had a terrible time trying to get his work. Excuse me. I think I need some of that water. Sorry, that's super unprofessional, but I said this was raw and unedited. He's obviously had a terrible time trying to get his work made, and obviously I spoke about him being under house arrest and then put in prison. So this is the blurb on the back of the DVD for This Is Not a Film. This clandestine documentary shot partially on an iPhone and smuggled into France in a cake. I thought it was a cake. I did say I thought it was a cake in the previous episode. For a last-minute submission to Cannes, depicts the day-to-day life of acclaimed director Jafar Panahi offside The Circle. While appealing his sentence, 6 years in prison and a 20-year ban from filmmaking, Panahi is seen talking to his family and lawyer on the phone, discussing his plight and reflecting on the meaning of the art of filmmaking. So as it describes, much of it is him just sat around in his apartment. It's shot on a phone. This is something that anyone, well, not anyone, because not everyone's living in the circumstances that he is, but someone could have made. I could start making a film today in my house, filming myself on an iPhone, talking about the problems that I'm dealing with. Obviously, there's extreme circumstances in this regard because he's dealing with prison. He's got this 20-year filmmaking ban. But it sounds pretty amateur, quite frankly. And even the title itself, This Is Not a Film. It sounds amateur, right? It's like it's shot on a phone. It's someone sat in their house. The front of the DVD says, "This is not a film," and then the the tagline, if we could tell a film, then why make a film? If that film didn't get into Cannes, is that suddenly an amateur film? Thoughts? Okay. And it just seems like there's these old structures and old systems that are clinging on for relevance and obviously money. These gatekeepers want to keep these boundaries in place, because without them, it kind of, the whole thing falls apart. And maybe the whole thing is falling apart. So the past week as well, so Janet Yang, former president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, has predicted major changes in the coming years to the way films are distributed. So this is a Screen Daily article, so you can find this online. Quote, soon I believe artists and filmmakers will be able to own their own material. We will soon see a dissolution of the distribution companies that have been dominating Hollywood for so long, because there simply won't be as much need for them. Much need for them. Sorry, I'll get my words out. For me, the future looks a lot like more personal branding. YouTube is already the largest media company in the world. It will become more and more incumbent on artists to carve their own path and become their own ecosystem and put things out there. In that way, I feel optimistic. I feel very optimistic, because I think we'll be able to make things, own them, distribute them on our own. There will be a lot more people working with whomever they want to work anywhere in the world. So that's the former head of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and they're predicting a future in which people are taking this more personal, independent approach to filmmaking, owning their own work, maybe putting it out on YouTube, but then the movie database is saying, but that's not professional. The former head of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences are saying that, but that is the future, because these kind of old ways of thinking about distribution and professional, amateur, the lines are blurring. But does that mean that people will be able to sustain careers and make money from this? Maybe not. So Ted Hope, if you go to IMDb and type in Ted Hope, you'll know one film, or you'll have probably seen one film that he's been involved in. So he's written an article that's been shared by IndieWire about the fact that the system is now collapsing. So the traditional system in which he operated is not working in the same way. And those middle-level films that used to get made on, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 million dollars are now disappearing completely. And he says, democracy requires small business owners to have a healthy level playing field. Democracy and a healthy economy both require access to customers, in this case audiences, and markets. We need regulation and competition. Media consolidation has destroyed what was once America's second strongest global industry, one that the world enjoyed because of its abilities to move both hearts and minds. I've had a great career in it, but I would no longer recommend it for anyone who had an alternative. So he blames much of this on the fact that companies like Netflix are now controlling distribution, they're making the films, they're deciding what gets seen and so forth. But this very successful producer is now saying that they could no longer recommend what they've spent their life doing as a career. And this is kind of like, you've got both sides of the coin there. You've got someone like Janet Yang who's saying this is great because it means that people can make stuff, they can put it out into the world, that's the future. But then you've got someone like Ted Hope who's made a lot of films, a lot of successful films, saying that the system is totally collapsing. And I don't really know where we go from here as creatives, and I don't know what the future is for independent filmmakers. I really don't. I mean, from my perspective, it's a case of keep making, put it out into the world, try and find an audience. Maybe that is what filmmakers need to now do, and accept that maybe film is like other art forms. So if you think historically, someone like Van Gogh had very little recognition in his own life. Equally, someone like Vivian Maier, a photographer who in her own life was an amateur essentially, so she made ends meet by she was a nanny. That's how she funded her passion of photography. So she would work and then buy rolls of film and go out and shoot photographs that are now really highly acclaimed. So even when I was in New York in January, one of her books was in one of the museums. You can see her photographs, but this is because someone found her work at an auction, like they were in storage bins. Her photographs, many of them she didn't even develop. She just took them, put the rolls of film into boxes, and I want to say it was something like 150,000 photos she took in her life. I might be getting that wrong. I read this just before, but I have watched a documentary on her called Finding Vivian Maier, which is really interesting for those who this sounds like something that might be of interest to them. So Vivian Maier, photographer, really great photographer as well, had no success in her own life in that field. Only after has she been recognised as a great photographer. So these systems that are put in place, for me, you've got to sometimes take them with a pinch of salt, because they might not know what they're doing, as discussed last week. I mean, Christopher Nolan is a filmmaker who's spoken about the fact that he had no funding for his first films. He had loads of rejection emails from companies when he was looking for funding to start his career. Now look at Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan couldn't even get into film school. There's other filmmakers like that. They couldn't get into film school and now gone on to great careers. Edgar Wright's another. But when you think of people like Van Gogh and Vivian Maier, it just reminds you that sometimes maybe the systems in your own life might not be working in the way that you'd like them to. So now I'd just like to read from, I've used this book a few times now, Film Marketing and Distribution, an Independent Filmmaker's Guide. So, say you decide to self-distribute your project, your feature film or short film, probably your feature film if you're looking at self-distribution. This is what you're looking at. So, there's a table that has prices listed. So, self-distribution budget breakdown for a mid-budget indie film aiming for a small theatrical and digital release. 1. Theatrical release costs for a limited run. You've got DCP creation, so that's kind of the system. It's like a hard drive that your film goes on that's able to then be played in cinema screens. Cost estimated 500 to 1,500. So this is required for cinema screenings. BBFC certification 900 to 1,200. So this is mandatory for UK theatrical release. Cinema rental, so four-walling, that's when you hire it out yourself and then you might sell tickets for a screening. 500 to 3,000 per screening. So that would obviously depend on the cinema that you were four-walling. PR and publicity for theatrical release, 3,000 to 10,000. So this will include press, screenings, influencers if you want to go down that route. Social media ads, 1,000 to 5,000 pounds. So that's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube ads, etc. Trailer and key art, 1,500 to 5,000. So to get professional assets, you're looking at 1,500 to 5,000 for kind of trailer and promotional images. That's already a total for theatrical self-distribution of 7,400 to possibly 25,700 pounds. If you decide to go down transactional video on demand, so digital release, we're looking at an aggregator fee. So that's someone who will be able to go to platforms like iTunes or Netflix and try and get your film on those platforms. Estimated cost 800 to 1,200 per platform, that is. And some aggregators take a percentage of sales. Next, encoding and quality control, 500 to 1,500. So ensuring the files meet platform specs. Next, captions and subtitles, you can pay someone to do for you, 150 to 500 pounds. So this is mandatory for most platforms, but there's a hack for this. So what you can do, and I'm sorry to put some people out of business, if you upload your film to YouTube, YouTube creates the captions for you, and then you can obviously edit the ones that the words that don't quite match and don't quite align with what the characters are saying, and then you've got closed caption and subtitle files. So that's a little hack for people out there. And I actually did this for X. I reverse engineered the film into Italian, Spanish, Japanese, and German. So, and how I did this was I took the dialogue, put it into Google Translate. Obviously, I know that the problems there are that Google Translate might not have exact understanding of the language for the other language. So what you then do is you say you go English to Japanese, then put it back, what they've thrown out as the answer, Japanese to English, to check that it lines up. So that's another thing that you can do. PR and social media ads. Did I do that? Oh yeah, PR and social media ads for digital for a digital release, 2,000 to 10,000. So paid campaigns targeting digital audiences. That's what they're saying it might cost. Influencer and YouTuber promotion. I mean, that just makes me sigh heavily. 1,000 to 5,000. Hiring niche influencers to review the film. Website and direct sales setup, £500 to £2,000 if selling directly via Vimeo, for instance. So total for a digital release, £4,950 to £20,200 is what you might possibly spend self-distributing. And then finally, I say finally, there's a few extra pages, but I'll just do physical media. I know it's a kind of seems to be phasing out, but then, I mean, I still buy physical media, and I believe it's having a bit of a resurgence. So DVD, Blu-ray authoring, £1,000 to £3,000. Manufacturing copies, £1,500 to £3,000. Distribution and warehousing, £500 to £2,000. PR and collector outreach, £1,000 to £5,000. So even physical media, you could end up spending £4,000 to £13,000. Meanwhile, if you do a digital release for free, you can put it on Amazon Direct for £0. You can do YouTube AVOD, so that's ads-based streaming, monetize YouTube release, £0. Vimeo on demand, £0. AVOD, so that's through things like Film Hub, £0. And you could potentially release your film for free and get it out into the world, and you've spent nothing. And so when you see these decisions by people like the Movie Database, obviously it's keeping some businesses operating, because if on the one hand I could be spending 20,000-30,000 just promoting the film and getting it out into theaters or onto digital platforms, and it might lead to a lot of success though. So the film that's on Disney that I mentioned earlier and Netflix, I'm sure a lot of money was spent on that film, getting it through aggregators, I don't know who the aggregator was on that project, but that person has obviously done quite well with it, because they got it a limited cinema release, they got it reviewed in Sight and Sound. I think it was in Total Film magazine as well. There was a review in there. They've got it on Netflix, and now they've got it on Disney Plus. Obviously, that might identify what the film is, but you can go and check the film out and make your own mind up about it. But that filmmaker has obviously spent a lot of money, and it's paid off in one regard, but will they ever see a return on that money? I don't know. Maybe not. I think essentially, if you go to these platforms like Netflix, you're essentially giving it away to have the prestige of saying my film's on Netflix, and maybe that's worth the trade-off for some people, that they're going to spend this money, get it on Netflix, get more eyes seen on it. But then for that particular film, is Netflix the right audience for that project? I'm not sure it is. I'm thinking of platforms like Mubi would probably appreciate that film a little bit more. So the flip side is that it might bring your film to eyes that are not really interested in what you're selling. So I don't know, like it just makes you question the system. And in regards to the Movie Database, it shocked me a little bit, because I thought, I've spent a long time dedicating myself to filmmaking. If you look at my websites, this isn't like bragging, and it's like make what you want of the films, but I've made short fiction films, I've made short factual films. I'm on my third feature film. I've worked on films for other filmmakers that are on professional platforms. Some of these short films have screened at festivals that would be deemed worthy, and yet the movie database have decided that I'm an amateur. So be it. So I mean, I kind of love that. If you go to, there's an interview online from Orson Welles, and he says like we need to rethink that word amateur because it actually comes from amor or amore, depending on like where you're from. But the idea that you love something and that you're gonna commit to it. So if I'm an amateur filmmaker, so be it. I'm okay with that. I'm so much okay with it that a number of the films that were still on the movie database, I reported them as amateur projects so that they would be deleted. And I actually sent multiple messages saying this should be deleted because it's not a proper film. But the reality is the system has changed. The system has changed. I don't need permission from anyone to make my films, to release them into the world. I hope this hasn't come off as a rant. I really do, because in many ways it's a positive, because once you know where these people stand, these suits, these gatekeepers, once you know where they stand, you can veer around them. So moving forward, if I have to be seen as an amateur filmmaker and release my work through YouTube or Amazon, that's fine. And already what's interesting about the podcast and putting these things out through social media is that other opportunities do appear. So a filmmaker called Jack Clark messaged me after listening to the last podcast episode about film festivals, and it turns out he's now running the Manchester Fringe Film Festival, which is this Sunday. There's 3 screenings. I've signed up to them, and they're going to be screening a bunch of short films by different filmmakers. More emphasis on independent filmmaking. But he said this came about because of the fact that the Manchester Film Festival, he had similar thoughts to what I did about what they were doing and what they were hoping to achieve. And obviously it's backfired a little bit because a number of those tickets for those events are now on Show Film First, whereas this Manchester Fringe Film Festival seems to be pretty popular, and people, like, one of the screenings is sold out. I don't know how many seats, maybe there's only 10 seats and that's why it's sold out. No, I'm kidding. But it's like other opportunities present themselves, and people find ways to get their work seen. Another filmmaker reached out to me and said maybe you should start the PI Filmmaker Festival or PI Film Festival. So they're based in Manchester. This is a Manchester filmmaker, and they said like they have a space that they could easily get access to, and maybe we should set this up for 2027. So a festival that's promoting personal work, promoting indie films, like what I would deem indie, not what Netflix deems indie, with $10 million films, like genuine low budget, do it yourself, micro budget filmmaking. Maybe that's something we'll look into. And so yeah, it's interesting like what's out there and what comes about because of the fact that you're calling out some of these institutions and these corporate suits. So like moving forward, movie database, fine. I might have to bend a little bit for Notion, because if I want it on Letterboxd, I'll have to make a movie database title page for it, but then I can just report it as soon as it's on Letterboxd, because that's what's interesting. Letterboxd hasn't deleted these films, so even though some of them were deleted off the movie database and then I deleted all of them, they're still on Letterboxd. So obviously Letterboxd takes this information and then keeps it on the platform. So I might have to make a Notion page and then delete it. That's fine. So what have I been watching this past week? I went to the IMAX on Monday evening to watch Project Hail Mary. That must be seen on IMAX. If you're going to go watch this movie, please take the time. I know it's a bit more money out your pocket, but it was thoroughly worth it because it was shot for the IMAX format, so 1:3 aspect ratio. Really, really moving film. I shed a few tears. I mean, it's not it's nothing completely original. It's like films you've seen before. I won't say which films because that would give away the plot. But yeah, it was nice. It was a nice film. It moved me. So I would recommend that. Ryan Gosling, excellent performance. I've heard people say in the past some people think he can't act. I just think that's absolutely wild. I mean, if you've seen things like Blue Valentine or even Project Hail Mary or something like The Nice Guys, he's a great actor, really great. I've done 2 video essays that are on my YouTube page, bit of a plug, in which I use Ryan Gosling to highlight certain things in regards to film performance. So please go check them out. Yeah, like Ryan Gosling, it's interesting as an actor because I saw this interview with him this week, and he said one of the best things that a director said to him is, like, as an actor, you want to be in the moment, you want to have this idea that, yeah, I'm feeling it, so it's right. And the director said to Ryan Gosling, it doesn't really matter whether you are feeling it. What matters is whether the audience are feeling it. And one of the video essays kind of highlights that idea that cinema acting is sometimes, it's about construction in ways that theatre performance isn't. And it was interesting hearing Ryan Gosling in that interview promoting this film discuss that fact that, yeah, he can hit the emotional beats. Like, there's moments where he's breaking down on camera in Project Hail Mary, but also his understanding that for all my actor method of, oh, I'm feeling this right now, ultimately that doesn't matter if it isn't conveyed on screen. And I know that's something that I've spoken about a lot with actors on occasions where they've said, oh, but it feels right to me. It's like, yeah, but through this monitor I'm not seeing that, and you've got to be, as the director, the eyes of the audience. And if you're not seeing it, it kind of doesn't matter whether the actor's saying, yeah, but in my gut I'm feeling this and I'm drawing on these memories. So that was interesting that Ryan Gosling said that. But anyway, yeah, he gives an incredible performance in the film. Much of it he's just acting with himself and a puppet, so in that regard it's even more impressive. So yeah, I would recommend that. I actually did also watch another Jafar Panahi film, the Offside one that's mentioned in the blurb of that DVD, about a group of girls that are trying to watch a qualifying football match for the World Cup, and they're not allowed in because of the rules of the state. Another film that I would thoroughly recommend, really important filmmaking. And then what else did I watch? Obviously, I watched the film at the Manchester Film Festival. And I think that was it. Oh, I also watched last night Hard Boiled on Arrow 4K. That was good. That was enjoyable. John Woo action film. So I got the new Arrow 4K. So yeah, as I said, really important to keep up with physical media, because the reality is for me, and this ties into what this episode's kind of about these gatekeepers. There was this idea of the great future that streaming was going to be, that everything would be at your fingertips. The reality is it isn't. Like, the amount of times I've been speaking to my partner and her son's like, oh, could we watch this? Like a film I've been discussing. We go to look on the streaming platforms and it's nowhere. So like, I think physical media is still super important because it's always on your shelf and no one can take it away from you. Because the reality is, even if you buy a digital movie through Amazon, when the license is up, it just disappears from your account and that's it. You no longer have it. So yeah, physical media, I'm always buying discs from these boutique labels, Criterion, Arrow, Second Sight Films. And I think it's really important to support the industry. I hate using that word industry because it flies in the face of this idea of me making art. But yeah, I think it's really important to support physical media so that cinema is still seen, and there's an opportunity for work to get out there into the world. So yeah, that's kind of this week's episode. A bit of a ramble, a bit of what Blind Boy would call a phone call. Although there was a bit of a hot take about the movie database and what is professional and what is amateur. And for me, I'm just not prepared to jump through these hoops. As I said, I've made a lot of films. I've worked on a lot of films. I'm not going to have someone tell me what is a film and what isn't. Like, the minute you make a film, you're a filmmaker. And I don't think it's for these companies to decide what is amateur and what is professional. It really isn't. Because the reality is, if a Clerks, a Kevin Smith, or a Robert Rodriguez existed were trying to become filmmakers now, Clerks and El Mariachi probably would have ended up on Amazon Prime. And then suddenly those films are amateur films. And I don't think that's right. If you've made a film, you're a filmmaker. And you're a professional filmmaker, assuming you're treating your cast and crew well. So yeah, that's it for this week's episode. Hopefully this has been of use and given you some food for thought. I know that there was a comment on YouTube yesterday saying it's refreshing to hear someone with a brain talking about these things. So that was nice, and hopefully that will continue, and we'll pick up some more listeners. But that's it for this week. Thank you for listening. I'll see you again next week, or you'll hear from me again next week, should I say. Cheers. Bye-bye.